if you go to week 6, 7, because I have combined 6 and 7, week 6 and 7. So there is a recording of the previous year's workshop on how to write the commentary. The commentary is the very first major assignment, and it would require everyone to write a commentary, a critical reflection, a critical review of 2 pretty lengthy pieces of writing, which I discussed very briefly today a bit. But I would like to invite everyone to watch these, the recordings from the past. We even had last year, in 2022, we had a kind of a workshop, and together with the students, we mark the examples from the past, so you can also watch that and see what is expected, what is not expected, and so on and so forth, and the criteria, the standards that we apply practically in marking the assignments. These assignments are not the very best, and they're not the very worst, the one that sit in the middle, so you can see the strengths and weaknesses at the same time. And another consultation session on how to write the critical commentary. So I strongly recommend that everybody would start as soon as they can, as soon as you can, start reading those 2 lengthy articles. Actually, one of them is a book chapter and the other one is a journal article. And the topic of them are not about they're not addressing capitalism. They're practically addressing post-capitalist alternatives. And both post-capitalist alternatives, the first one, you can find everything about the assignment if you go to assignment number 2, critical review of reading materials, or in other words, the commentary. So everything you need to know is there. So the size, the expected size, that you can go up and down by 20%. It's 800 words, but I'm flexible. There's a commentary question. There's a question that you need to answer, that's a guiding question. It's very simple. It's just asking you, how useful, practically, how useful these 2 pieces of writing are in terms of giving us a good sense of what the alternatives are. So how do these readings enhance our understanding of the potential scope, the strengths and weaknesses inherent in the post-capitalist alternatives? So these are the very first encounters we have with the alternatives. So criticism of capitalism will end today, and from next week onward, we're going to deal with the alternatives. We're going to make ourselves familiar with alternatives, but remember that our approach to alternatives is not going to be a passive one. It would be unfair, and we just don't want to simply worship any alternative to capitalism simply because capitalism is bad, and is therefore any alternative to capitalism should be better or should be good. It's not a good bad thing. So the critical thinking skills that we have developed so far in relation to criticism, in relation to capitalism, we would like to extend that to the alternatives. Why is that? Well, because we don't want to replicate and repeat the mistakes and problems and the flaws of the system. So the more one of the reasons that we wanted to take a very critical approach to capitalism, to the core aspects of capitalism, was to actually equip ourselves with the necessary skills in building alternatives that would not actually reproduce the problems capitalism has, or reproduce the problems we have been historically suffering from, like gender inequalities, like racial inequalities. Many of such things have been in the previous attempts to go beyond capitalism. Many nasty, ugly things have happened. We would like to make ourselves aware of them, and we would like to make sure that in future, in any way, we're going to contribute to the development of such alternatives. We would not be reproducing the problems. So these two, and these are the required readings. These are the two pieces of writing that we would like to reflect on them and write the commentary about them. The first one is written by Chris Rogers, and it's about capitalism and its alternatives. He only reviews 3 classical alternatives. The 3 are libertarianism, which is actually not an alternative to capitalism. You would say it's a capitalist alternative, or it's capitalism on a steroid. Why as an alternative? Well, because many of these libertarians say the reason that we are in this mess is because we haven't been truly embracing capitalism. So he is going to, he criticizes that. In doing that, remember, he goes into a lot of philosophical discussions that even don't make perfect sense to me. I'm not a philosopher, can't pretend. So we need to be very strategic. It's another skill that we would like to develop in this course, and not just this in this course, but in every other course. That skill would be very, very useful to every one of us. And that skill is to be strategic. Always be strategic. There is too much information, too much complexity in the information. So we can't really task ourselves to understand every sentence, every word, every term. That's not that really necessary. What we want to develop as a skill is to, as I said, is to be strategic in our reading. And we would just like to understand the very major arguments in each section of these articles. So the good thing about Rogers and also the Wendy Harker, the second one, is that they have actually divided their work, their writing into sections, and they address alternatives one by one. And the good thing about Rogers is that he gives you, at the end of each section, when he discusses each one of those alternatives, he gives you a conclusion. And so you can practically just look at the introduction part of each section, each alternative, and the conclusion part of each section, and get the grasp the gist of it, the spirit of it. And that would be more than enough, because we only have 800 words. Okay, so we would like to make sure that everybody is on the same page in terms of understanding the general argument these guys are offering us. And in the end, Rogers gives us an overall conclusion. And so he takes a critical approach. He's a sympathizer with socialism and anarchism, but he wants to be an insider critic and tell us that what went wrong with these alternatives, and how should we look at the alternatives. We shouldn't look at them as the products, put on the shelf that we can go and buy them and bring them home and apply them or use them. Our relationship with these alternatives shouldn't be like a consumer relationship. We are very much indoctrinated by capitalism to think that we are consumers. You even talk to a friend and talk about alternatives. Oh, where is the alternative? Well, what is the alternative? Well, the alternative is you and me. When we start believing in ourselves, and when we start thinking differently, and we start behaving differently, and when we come together to form collective actions, and that's when the alternative starts to emerge. So that's a very interesting point, interesting argument that we can reflect on. And the second one, Wendy Harker, talks about more modern, newer kind of alternatives, not the classical one, not the giant ones like socialism, anarchism. So these are place-based, feminists, indigenous, Green New Deal, those sort of things. They're not meta-narratives, they're not giant narratives, they're more practice-oriented, and they're more modern. So that's the difference. And actually these two articles, even if they are published in 2014, are pretty old, 10 years old. I haven't been able to find anything comparable to these two, that because they complement each other. One covers the classicals, the other one covers the modern ones, and their approaches are also a little bit different. So it would be it's one of the expectations that towards the end of your commentary, you make a comparison between these two. You know, in terms of their approaches, in terms of the type of alternatives they have covered, and so on and so forth. Rogers reflects directly himself on the alternatives, whereas Wendy Harkett is a bit different. She looks at the alternatives through the lens of the literature. So she doesn't reflect on them directly, you know, as someone who is studying them directly. But the literature is rich enough for her. It just sounds like, you know, she's doing a literature review, but in with an active voice. So these are very super interesting, super insightful articles. And I really, even if not for the sake of the assignment, for the sake of learning something really special, really special. And especially we're at the turning point in this course, in this semester. We would like to later, we would like to enter into the realm of alternatives. So we would like to be well equipped and well skillful when we get in there. For the first time, I'm actually giving people something that would help them, hopefully, as a template you would like to consider, or maybe some instructions on how to structure. So I have put, you know, number of words for each section, but I mean, they're not written on the stone, so you can be flexible with that. So, you know, for the introduction, you do this. For the analysis of Rogers, you do this. Then go on and move forward to the analysis of Harkert's perspective and do this. And then make a comparison as the comparative discussion or conclusion, if you like. 200 words, about 200 words. We need to be very succinct, very concise, and up to the point. And that's, again, one of the skills, you know, that choose to be able to actually produce something as short as this, but still, you know, very self-revealing. I have even shared, again, as I said before, examples that are marked, and you can see the comments in there. So you can see what are the problems that we should avoid. Yes, and the assessment evaluation criteria, and again the same recordings from the past that you can watch. But I would like you, maybe you watch one of them and then make yourself familiar with the assignment, and then start reading the two and take notes of them. Bear in mind, you know, the instructions and the expectations when you read and when you take notes, and then start writing as soon as you can. Always it's interesting. People think that they should first read everything and understand everything, and then they should sit back and start writing. That's not the best way forward. You better to mix reading and writing. So when you take notes and put them into the draft that you want, and then later you have something to work on, rather than an empty space, a blank page. So the sooner you start writing, the better. It doesn't matter if your writing goes wrong, you have still something to fix. It's better than nothing. Okay. I hope I'm making sense, and I would like to really emphasize on the importance of this assignment. And the fact that unfortunately it's been affected by, but then in week 7 we will come back, and fortunately our class is on the early week. So I expect that people would come back with some kind of a draft, or at least some questions or concerns maybe. So we can discuss the commentaries, we can discuss the concerns and questions. My concern is that still it would be a little bit too close to the deadline, because the deadline for this is when the beginning of the mid-semester break, almost the end of week 7. So it would be a little bit too late to run a workshop by then, but well, some people may be leaving it to the very last week. I don't know, but I would advise to the opposite. Start as soon as you can, so we will have something to discuss in week 7 when we come back, so that would compensate for the absence of classes in week 6. So look at week 6, 7 module. Look at the assignment description for assignment number 2, the commentary. Please very carefully, very closely, and start reading and writing as soon as you can. Also watch the recordings from the past. Hopefully you will find them useful. Take note of anything that concerns you, anything that doesn't make sense to you, any question that emerges in the process of reading and writing, or put them into the forums, the weekly forums, or the forum for this assignment. I will immediately receive an email from the system, and I will respond to those questions as soon as I can.